Biden gets roasted by Morning Joe. Secretary of State Pompeo will be joining us to talk about China and U.S. foreign policy. Sean Davis weighs in on General Flynn. Raheem Kassam will be in the House, and Alex Jones will eat his neighbors.
Regarding Joe Biden, your campaign and surrogates going after him pretty hard with regard to these allegations from Tara Reid. What do you say to Joe Biden?
I don't think so. I don't think they're going after him hard with regard to Tara Reid.
Allegations, and what do you say to Joe Biden?
I don't know anything about it. I don't know exactly. I think he should respond. You know, it could be false accusations. I know all about false accusations. I've been falsely charged numerous times. And there is such a thing. If you look at Brett Kavanaugh, this is an outstanding man. He was falsely charged. What happened with him was an absolute disgrace to our country. And I guess 3 of the 4 women have now admitted that. And of the 4th, give me a break. I mean, take a look. 36 years. That is. Look, this is a fine man. I saw a man suffering so unfairly. I'm talking about Brett Kavanaugh. But I don't know. I can't speak for Biden. I can only say that I think he should respond. I think he should answer them.
Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everybody. The president there asked about the allegations against Joe Biden and being, I think, fair-minded in his response. He's talking about how there are false allegations out there. He said it could be false allegations. You know, when the president of the United States has an opportunity here to crush his rival, the person running against him, he goes for a more fair, more even-handed response. I think it's in part because Trump himself has been the subject of, as he says, I know all about false accusations. So he's saying we got to see. Now, why he brings up Kavanaugh is quite clear. The left, the libs, the Dems, the media, they almost managed to scuttle Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court and ruin his life and his career. Could you imagine the stain that would leave on that man, on his legacy, what that could do to his family? It could destroy him. I mean, honestly, we would be lucky if they had destroyed the Kavanaugh nomination the way that they sought to. We would have been fortunate if we didn't find out years later that Kavanaugh decided to make a very bad choice about what to do with his own safety. That's the kind of destruction that they were willing to induce, that they were willing to create because they hated Kavanaugh so much, because of the threat that he is as a Supreme Court justice to them getting what they want from the Supreme Court, which never should be the case. It's not about the Supreme Court as a super legislator, but that's what they want. That's what they prefer. And so if you try to get in the way of that, there's a problem. And they'll do anything. And the Kavanaugh saga was the ugliest political fight I've ever seen. And I will never think of some people the same way, including some liberals that I had previously had pretty friendly relations with. Not like that friendly, but, you know, people that I knew. And they were willing to just go along with it all. And and the people, anyone in the media also that were making fun of Kavanaugh's defense of himself, he seemed unhinged. These people are they're out of their minds. You're falsely accused by lunatics of sexual assault. In one case, let's not forget, one of the accusers said that Brett Kavanaugh was running a secret gang rape ring in high school. And she, when she was in college, because she didn't really do the math on the ages and the years here, when she was in college, would go back to the high school parties where there were gang rapes occurring of unconscious girls and said that Kavanaugh maybe had drugged one of them. And then she said, well, actually, I don't think he drugged one of them. That person, the media gave her credibility. She was part of this assault on Kavanaugh. The most grotesque thing I've ever seen. And the point at the time as well, for all of us, was that Kavanaugh could have been any one of us, any one of our dads, our brothers, our husbands, our best friends. Brett Kavanaugh could be any of us. A man accused with obvious political motivation and a complete absence of corroborating evidence of any kind. In fact, all the evidence was going against the accusers. And Trump brings this up, and we should never forget it, because this is one of those moments when you saw the separation between left and right, that the so-called liberals in this country, the Democratic ideology, the party of the Democrats, is willing to wholesale embrace lies and immorality to get what it wants. That the party line will be a lie. That the party line will be something that leverages the destruction of a human being on false pretenses. The bearing of false witness, if you want to go biblical, the bearing of false witness against someone as part of a political assault. It was absolutely appalling. And we all told them at the time, we said, libs, you're going to wake up one day and say, uh-oh, we probably shouldn't have used this make-believe standard. I mean, think of what this would, women have a right to be believed. That was the phrase they used. It was a great, whip up the mob, get them into a frenzy. Women have a right to be believed. Okay, well, explain to me what that means for the justice system and also, yes, for people's reputations. Fact, women do lie about sexual assault sometimes. It's a tiny minority of women, but what happens to the men who happen to be falsely accused by those tiny minority? Are they just collateral damage? I'll never forget years ago the celebrated, on the left at least, pseudo-intellectual Ezra Klein saying that, if consent standards are raised so high by state law that some guys who didn't rape somebody have to be accused of rape, but that puts all other guys on notice, that would be a cost that we have to bear to make women feel safer. Oh, so innocent guys should go to prison for rapes that they didn't commit because that will put all the rest of us on notice? I mean, that was a classic left-wing beta male moment. That was some years ago. I'll never forget that. And remember, Biden was also part of adjusting college campus Title IX tribunals, these preposterous show trials that they do, where you don't have any rights to confront the accused. You don't have the right to counsel. You don't, the standard is not even really, it's not even really clear. Is it a beyond a reasonable doubt, a preponderance of the evidence? They make it up as they go along. You basically have no rights as the accused other than to suffer so that the accuser feels better about the situation. That's how the college campus Title IX sexual assault tribunals that Obama and Biden made an issue of federal policy. Don't forget that. So now Biden wants the very same or the very kind of justice that he denied to young men all across America on college campuses. Now Biden wants the very same treatment that the Democratic Party was denying Kavanaugh entirely. And now they're gaslighting us. No, we just wanted an investigation. Really? Libs, do you think they really do think they're smarter than us, which is one of the more annoying things about them, because they're not. 2-day FBI investigation. What the heck are you going to find from a 2-day? You think the FBI are some kind of, superhero cops? Don't even get me started on what happened to General Flynn. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Well, the FBI is just going to say, we'll find out what happened 30 years ago based on the allegations of a woman who's clearly emotionally disturbed, who can't remember when, where, or how the thing happened. All she can remember is that at this point in time, she needs to destroy Brett Kavanaugh. That's really all she can remember. He grabbed at her in a place that she can't remember, at a time she can't remember, in a year she can't remember, and there's no one else who has any memory of this whatsoever. This, Boy Scout, straight-A student, captain of the football team who's bringing meals to the needy on the weekends, Brett Kavanaugh. Secret gang rapist, folks. That's what they told you about him. These people are disgusting. I mean, really, I don't pull punches about the Kavanaugh thing. Those who are trying to destroy him and were willing to abandon all critical faculty, all rationality, all reasonableness are a disgrace. They're immoral, they're disgusting, and they're stupid, too. All of the above. All of the above. They let their emotions completely override the rest of their brain. And Trump was willing to say there are false accusations. This morning, Joe Biden actually had to answer for the allegation. Trump is saying there can be. He's not saying this allegation is false. He's saying there can be false allegations, which I think is a pretty generous thing under the circumstances for him to say. So then that brings me to, okay, well, what exactly, if we look at this now, what can we expect from Joe Biden? Ah, Joe Biden got roasted on Morning Joe indeed. Let's get into that. Hey, I've got to tell you, I'm really enjoying the latest in the Terminal List thriller series, Savage Son from Jack Carr. I'm right in the middle of this book. Let me tell you, the action is pulse pounding. It's from somebody who really understands what they're writing about. You know, Jack Carr was a former Navy SEAL. He saw combat overseas. This guy knows his stuff and understands what it is to write action from a first-person perspective. Jack Carr explores the darkest instincts of humanity through the eyes of a guy who has seen all sides of it, the best and the worst. You know, you should download the audio edition today of Jack Carr's Savage Son. It's available wherever audiobooks are sold. You will absolutely love this, and you'll want to get the rest of the Terminal List series too. But start with Savage Son. This is Jack Carr's latest thriller. It is able to be downloaded anywhere you get audiobooks. Savage Son. Download the audiobook today, read by Ray Porter. So it's top quality production value, a fantastic book. Jack Carr's Savage Son. Download it. Audiobook today.
These claims are not true. There's no cooperation. I mean, they're not true.
Mr. Vice President.
I don't know what else I can say to you.
Well, I'm going to try and ask many different ways. Stacey Abrams said during the Kavanaugh hearings, I believe women. I believe survivors of assault should be supported and their voices heard. Kirsten Gillibrand tweeted, do we believe women? Do we give them the opportunity to tell their story? We must be a country that says yes every time. They now both support you. Nancy Pelosi falls into this category too, as well as many other leaders in the Democratic Party. Are women to be believed? Are women to be believed unless it pertains to you?
Look, women are to be believed given the benefit of the doubt. If they come forward and say something that they said happened to them, they should start off with the presumption they're telling the truth. Then you have to look at the circumstances and the facts. And the facts in this case do not exist. They never happened. And there's so many inconsistencies in what has been said in this case. So you just look at the facts. And I assure you, it did not happen. Period. Period.
But why is it different now? Do you regret what you said during the Kavanaugh hearings?
What I said during the Kavanaugh hearings was that she had a right to be heard. And the fact that she came forward, the presumption would be she's telling the truth unless it's proved she wasn't telling the truth.
That's not what he said during the Kavanaugh hearing, by the way. They're completely rewriting history now of what happened during Kavanaugh. Remember, the standard was that Kavanaugh should have to step down from the nomination in disgrace, despite nothing being proved about him. They couldn't prove a damn thing. They could not prove anything that was being alleged, not one bit of it, other than someone saying that someone made an act. They had that. When I say there was zero corroboration or evidence, zero. They had nothing. They had no additional witnesses. They had nothing. But he was supposed to step down because even the doubt, this was the standard. Women have a right to be believed, and even the doubt that an accusation causes is enough for you to not be on the Supreme Court, not be in a position of authority. You get to be ruined just so we're sure. That was the standard. Producer Mark and I were talking about this before the show. I give credit where it's due. It's one of my mantras here, right? I give credit where it's due. And Mika, right, Producer Mark, ask real questions.
Yeah, 100%. She did the right thing and didn't give him softballs.
Didn't give him softballs. Okay, ask some real questions. Now, I think, realistically, isn't it kind of funny that we have to sit here and go, hey, look, a journalist who's doing journalism for once. Where was CNN, by the way? Where was Fake Tapper? I'm sure he could have gotten, through all of his connections in the lib media, he could have gotten this interview with Biden. Didn't want it. Didn't want it. Needed to make sure it was Mika. I got to have a female be the one that's asking the question. We get it. We understand the optics here. You know, where Anderson Cooper, he didn't want this one. Nope. Bro Cuomo, done with the bench. Done with my lat curls or whatever. Bicep curls, lat, I don't know, rows, lat rows, bicep curls, same thing. See, I'm not Bro Cuomo. Yeah, no, none of that. None of that. No, they waited until this. I would also want them to ask a very straightforward question to Joe Biden, which they won't ask, though. And this would be if you really were trying to get to the heart of the matter in a way where they couldn't escape and avoid what the real implications of all of this may be. They should ask Joe Biden, is Tara Reade lying? Is she lying? He should have to answer that question. Because I can sit here and tell you, Blasey Ford and the rest, remember, there were others too, they were lying about Brett Kavanaugh. They were lying. You can say, no, they weren't. I can say, well, I think that they were. And no one can prove otherwise. So there you have it, right? Is she lying? He should be asked that question. But then you get into some other areas for Biden that did not look very good. Like, for example, why can't we search in his Senate records at the University of Delaware, which were sealed after he was done in the Senate? Why can't we search those records for her name to see if it comes up at all? And this is Biden's more kind of blathering and nonsense spewing from Biden. Play 4.
The material in the University of Delaware has no personnel files, but it does have a lot of confidential conversations that I had with the president about a particular issue, that I had with the heads of state of other places, that would not be something that would be revealed while I was in public office or while I was seeking public office. It just stands to reason. To the best of my knowledge, no one else has done that either.
I'm just talking about her name, not anybody else in those records. A search for that. Nothing classified with the president or anybody else. I'm just asking, why not do a search for Tara Reade's name in the University of Delaware records?
Look, I mean, who does that search?
The University of Delaware. Perhaps you set up a commission that can do it. I don't know. Whatever is the fairest way to create the most transparency.
Well, look, Mika, she said she filed a report. She has her employment records still. She said she refiled a report with the only office that would have a report in the United States Senate at the time. If the report was ever filed, it was filed there, period.
According to Joe Biden, at least, didn't sound very convincing with that. And also, what exactly is in the University of Delaware archives about Joe Biden's Senate record that's so concerning? Interesting, isn't it? Why wouldn't we have that transparency? That the university can hold these documents, but they're not able. They were going to be released. It's not classified stuff, so that's a total dodge. That's nonsense. They were going to be released. This came up in the interview, and then they decided to extend it beyond when Joe Biden is running, and it's because they think that there's oppo in there. There's opposition information that could be used by Trump or by anyone who's critical of Biden in a way that's going to hurt his campaign chances. Well, gee, now we really want to see what's in the University of Delaware records, don't we? They were gonna unseal it. And while Joe Biden was going to be a private citizen afterwards, making millions and millions of dollars giving speeches, I would note, but he's going to be a private citizen. And then they say, no, we can't release that. It'll hurt Joe Biden's presidential chances. Makes me think that people really want to see what's in there, don't they, Joe? Remember, this is the Democrat maneuver. Sometimes you got to destroy records. It was Clinton's national security advisor, Sandy Berger, who went into classified archives and snuck documents out in his socks and destroyed them. That's not something when you'd been national security advisor you would do unless there was damning material in there that was going to ruin your and your president's legacy. We don't know what was in those documents, do we? Because they were destroyed. The only copies of them, the handwritten notes, they were destroyed. Joe Biden, I'm wondering right now, how many weeks have they had to scrub the record of anything Tara Reade related? Oh, no, the Democrats wouldn't scrub it like with a cloth, like bleach bit a server. They wouldn't do that. All right, as promised, we have the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, with us right now. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much.
Buck, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
A lot going on right now. China, obviously, the big focus from the international relations standpoint. There's a piece in the Washington Post that says China wasn't wild about Pompeo before the virus. It's really gunning for him now. And then it seems to list a bunch of state media propaganda directed at you as if you've somehow upset them. Mr. Secretary, what have you done to get the ire of the Chinese Communist Party?
Yeah, Buck, what we've tried to do, what the Trump administration has tried to do is just very simple. We've tried to get China to deal with us in a way that is fair and reciprocal. We saw it most clearly at the front of the administration on trade, but we've done the same thing diplomatically, the same thing militarily. And then we've had this moment where this virus began in Wuhan, China. And in spite of President Trump's best efforts, my best efforts, we've not been able to get our experts in to figure out what actually happened here. We, of course, have two goals in that, right, Buck? We have the goal of figuring out what happened here. How did this go down? Why did it get out? How did it spread all around the world, causing now more than 50,000 losses of life in America, a couple 100,000 all across the world? But so we need a responsibility and accountability for this outbreak. But it's really important, Buck. We have to understand what happened to make sure something like this can't happen again. And so there are multiple labs inside of China, and our understanding of what takes place there is pretty limited. And there have been examples of leaks from those labs before. And this has been expensive, costly, a calamity around the world. We need to do our part, and there is responsibility on the part of the Chinese Communist Party to make sure something like this can never happen again. I don't know as to why they keep saying these things about me. This isn't personal. This is about protecting the American people, and we'll keep doing it.
And what is the response you get from your Chinese counterparts in the foreign ministry when you say, we just want greater access and transparency about something that is obviously affecting the United States and the whole world? Do they have a reason, a rationale for why we shouldn't get the access that we want?
You've seen the statements they've made publicly. They've claimed that they have been transparent, but of course, at least as of a day or two ago, we still didn't actually have a sample of the virus. We were still working to try to understand what the scope of the risk was. Answers about where this came from, they claim they didn't know. And then, in fact, those inside of China who have tried to talk about this, some of the people who have reported on it, or those who have doctors who tried to talk about this back in January or earlier this year, were denied access. We're told, don't talk about that, stop it. They banned discussions of this early on. That's not the way partners work, reliable partners work. Reliable partners share, they open up, especially when there's trouble. They go overboard to make sure everybody can understand how it came to be. That's all we've asked for. We hope that the Chinese Communist Party will see their way clear to allow the world to understand how the heck this virus got out of Wuhan, China, and spread all across the world.
We're speaking to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, I want to ask you, what about accountability? There's already been some discussion of possible lawsuits against the Chinese Communist Party. How that goes, how far they go, remains to be seen. But down the line, could you foresee a situation where, if in fact it is proven that China acted irresponsibly to cover this up, once we've gotten past, obviously, the most important thing right now, dealing with the virus, will there be accountability for the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, we've been focused on the here and now, trying to keep Americans safe and healthy as best we can, and to get this economy cranked back up again so people can get back to work, get out of their places that they're sheltering today. So that's been the predominant mission set we've had with respect to the virus. But there will come a time when we need to make sure that we understand what happened here, and those responsible, those who took actions that prevented earlier notice, those who took actions that allowed this virus to spread. You know, we've seen the narrative, which is that this virus began and the Chinese Communist Party knew about it, didn't alert the world to it in a timely fashion. The president's talked about this. As we continue to investigate and we learn precisely what happened, I am confident the whole world wants to know the answer to this, because the world has a right to know what happened, and then ultimately hold those persons or those nations who engaged in this activity that harmed the world, to find a mechanism to hold them accountable. As you said, there have already been some lawsuits filed in the United States. I don't know what precisely the right mechanism is and what the president will ultimately choose, but we will present him a set of options once we know all the facts that hold those persons responsible for this accountable.
And in Hong Kong, there's been an additional crackdown from the Chinese government. I know that that's gotten some focus from you recently. Are they essentially trying to use the shroud of everyone dealing with this virus to get away with more repressive measures? And what can the U.S. We have our hands full, obviously, with the virus, but to the degree that we can, are we able to push back a bit on the crackdown in Hong Kong?
we've made clear since early last year when we first started to see some of this activity in Hong Kong that our ask of the Chinese Communist Party was the same one that we make with respect to this virus. Show us what you're doing. You made a set of promises back in 1947. You made a set of promises about one country and two systems. Live up to those international commitments. If you do those things, Hong Kong can continue to be the thriving place that those who've had a chance to travel there know. It's a big financial hub. It's a place that has a different system inside of China, but they have obligations. They have duties, promises not that we made or not that the British made, but that the Chinese Communist Party made, and we asked them to live up to them. That's what I said last week when we saw some of the actions that they were taking, or at least contemplating taking, and it's what we continue to try and hold them accountable for. They have to live up to their international commitments. The world is watching these things, and it's not hard to do. They ought to just simply do it.
We're speaking to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, you and Senator Elizabeth Warren, former presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren, you had a bit of an exchange on Twitter. You told her that she should review the law again. Our rights under UN Security Council Resolution 2231 are separate from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA. But I'll put you down for Chinese arms sales to Iran on October 18th. Which weapon is it okay with you if they send? A couple of divisions of VT-4 tanks, good? Mr. Secretary, just tell me this. What is this dispute about? And what are you saying, and what is Elizabeth Warren's position?
Well, President Trump came in knowing that the Iran nuclear deal was a disaster and got out of it in May of 2018. One of the reasons it was such a wreck was that most of the major provisions weren't permanent. They began to expire. The first of such provisions expires in October of this year, just a handful of months away. Excuse me. And so we're going to use every tool we have in our diplomatic kit bag to ensure that come October of this year, the Chinese can't sell tanks, the Russians can't sell armaments, all conventional arms sales that this provision prohibits today will expire, and they'll be the world's largest state sponsor of terror in Iran will be able to purchase those weapon systems. And so we had a little bit of fun, but when Senator Warren said, goodness gracious, you can't use the JCPOA, we're not doing that. The United States has an unambiguous right at the UN Security Council to keep these restrictions in place. And President Trump has made clear we're going to make sure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, and we're going to deny them access to weapon systems to the maximum extent feasible.
I think given all the tough news these days, Secretary, before we let you go, I just wanted to ask, what are some of the things that are going on at the international level when it comes to our allies and partners trying to help us deal with this, whether it's information sharing between scientists, between doctors and medical researchers around the world? Just is there anything you can speak to with regard to how our allies are coming through for us?
Yeah, Buck, that's a great question. We've had some friends do some great things. First, we had tens of thousands of Americans stranded all across the world. Some of our friends have been fantastic in helping the State Department get now over 75,000 people back who had travel plans, or they were on a mission trip and got stuck overseas, and planes stopped moving, and we were able to get them home. So that's been heartening to watch these other countries help us do that as well in difficult conditions with the virus. But as for the work being done on the virus itself, there is a global campaign of countries that have really talented epidemiologists, scientists, people who know chemistry, working to find therapeutics and vaccines. You see the list of all of those that are in process. I'm very confident that we will find a good answer before too long, and it will be a global solution, one that I know America will play a significant part in moving forward.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, always appreciate your time, sir. Thanks again.
Buck, thank you, sir. Have a good day.
My question is, have you seen anything at this point that gives you a high degree of confidence that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was the origin of this virus?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And I think that the World Health Organization should be ashamed of themselves, because they're like the public relations agency for China. And this country pays them almost $500 million a year. And China pays them $38 million a year. And whether it's a lot or more, it doesn't matter. It's still, they shouldn't be making excuses when people make horrible mistakes, especially mistakes that are causing hundreds of thousands of people around the world to die. I think the World Health Organization should be ashamed of themselves.
And yet what's going to happen to the World Health Organization? Very little. I'm sure the Democrats, if they were to win the election this fall, will make sure they're funded. They won't even just restore any funding the Trump administration has considered withdrawing from them, from the U.S., the taxpayer, giving the WHO all this money. I bet the Democrats, if Biden were to win, if they can just carry Biden, this kind of doddering old fool. I mean, it's gotten ridiculous now what we see happening in all of these press conferences he's giving, and but they're going to do it. They don't care. These people are really, the one thing about Democrats you have to remember is they are ruthless, absolutely ruthless. And they think they're the nice people. That's what's always so amazing. They think they're the sweethearts that care about the poor and the needy and the downtrodden, but they're ruthless. And they don't give a, do you think Pelosi gives a crap about the poor or the downtrodden? Come on. No one really believes that. Nobody really believes that. I guess some libs do. It makes them feel safe and warm at night. That delusion is something that is helpful for them. It allows them to keep going and keep doing what they're doing. I want to note we will talk about the storming of the Capitol as it's being reported here with people in Michigan, armed protesters going to the Michigan Capitol. People are sick of the lockdowns. We will get into that because we do have to reopen this country, and I'm really getting to the point now where I'm wondering when everyone's going to wake up that the people in charge, they don't have some great plan. Doesn't exist. Our brilliant scientists, they can't cure this thing. They don't know what to do. We have doctors who are trying to treat it, trying to keep people alive. Thank you for that. But the medical community, in terms of research and medical policy at the highest levels, no answers. This test and trace thing that they keep talking about, it's not going to happen. I mean, we'll do some of it. Here's what they haven't yet figured out. Are they going to mandate testing for everybody, meaning that the government obligates you to get a blood test every 2 weeks for you to be able to go out and work? Is that what's going to? Because if you don't do that, people aren't going to take these tests. They're not going to do it. So how are you going to get to 20 million tests a day, which is what some people are talking about as needed for us to reopen? How do you get there if people won't do the tests? There are testing centers now all over the country that don't have very many clients. So what do they really think is going to happen here? How is this supposed to work? They don't have any answers. In fact, here, I wanted to, we're going to talk about the General Flynn situation, updates on that in just a moment. But first, just to give you a look, we got to talk about it because it affects all of us right now. And here you go. You've got the experts that CNN is currently citing in this piece. I'm trying to find this piece right now, telling us that turns out, here you go. The novel coronavirus is likely to keep spreading for at least another 18 months to 2 years until 60 to 70% of the population has been infected, a team of longstanding pandemic experts predicted in a new report. So remember, flatten the curve. I understand. We were told flatten the curve because of hospital capacity. Hospital capacity was not even close to being overrun nationwide, and we had excess capacity in New York City. It was a strain on hospitals for sure, but there were not people dying in the hallways by the hundreds who couldn't get any doctor, couldn't get a ventilator. That was all not true. And that was why we were told to flatten the curve. Now some of us turn around and look and say, hold on a minute. Why are we going to keep flattening the curve across the whole country when these epidemiologists who have been part of here, I mean, this is a highly respected group that this is all they do is look at pandemic disease and spread. There you go. This is from the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, CIDRAP, at the University of Minnesota. The idea that this is going to be done soon defies microbiology. They're telling us that up to 70% of people are going to get infected. Now, let's understand that is herd immunity. What they're telling, what these epidemics, so someone needs to tell me if they're wrong, because if we're flattening the curve just because we're scared and we want to pretend that something better is going to happen, we're destroying our economy, we're giving up all of our freedoms and individual liberties because we're hoping that in a month or two some miraculous cure emerges. And we are destroying our economy. This isn't like this is cost free. This is horrible stuff that's going on. And we're not even in the aggregate, and this is the piece that people don't seem to want to grasp, we're not even protecting people from infection long term. We're just slowing the rate of infection. Well, why are you slowing the rate of infection? So that you don't overwhelm hospitals? Hospitals aren't even close to being overwhelmed. So why are we slowing a rate of infection nationwide when it's not even close to overwhelming hospitals if the epidemiologists here are saying that basically we got to get a lot of people infected for this thing to go away? I'm not making this up. This is not some crazy, I'm reading what the experts are saying. I've thought this all along, that the only way past this virus is going to be through it. Yes, staff up. Yes, do what you can. Yes, protect the vulnerable. Remember, 60 to 70% of the population, if 70% of the low risk population, so if 70% of people in the country, but it's, 99% of that 70%, let's say, are under the age, I know this is getting a little bit confusing, but under the age of 70, we'll be okay. And then the at-risk population, because of the vectors of disease being much less, meaning that a healthy 30-year-old is going to come into contact, an immune 30-year-old is going to come into contact with an infected 30-year-old and therefore won't get the virus and then spread it to their grandma at home. If this is what we're heading for, then protecting vulnerable populations but allowing the younger and less susceptible to this to go back to life and go back to work, that's the only answer. And this continued flatten the curve doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense, folks. We need to face up to this.